Hello, I'm doing a movie review and I'm joined by my friend Jeremy.
Hi.
And the movie we want to review is the 1990 psychological horror film Jacob's Ladder. Now, Jacob's Ladder was directed by Adrian, who also directed Fatal Attraction, and it's written by Bruce Joel Rubin, who also wrote Ghost, and I think he also wrote the Wes Craven film Deadly Friend, and I know he's written some other stuff as well. Now, I actually already reviewed Jacob's Ladder years ago, back in 2012, but that was during the era of my channel where literally all I would do is just describe the plot of the movie and then say it was a very good movie or a very good book. So, yeah, Jacob's Ladder is a movie that absolutely deserves a more in-depth review from me, I think. But what did you think of Jacob's Ladder?
Oh, I think it's a very good movie. It's, a very good psychological thriller about a man who's just trying to find out what the hell is going on, you know. It's a very engrossing mystery, what's going on with this guy, what is reality, what is a nightmare, what is fantasy, what are all these nightmarish visions. There's so many questions that you're trying to figure out. And it's just, like I said, it's a very engrossing mystery, and it's just a great movie overall, I think.
And what I also like about it is it really plays around with genre, I think, because it is a horror film, but it's also very much a drama as well. And it also plays around with the conspiracy genre. So, the plot of Jacob's Ladder is it's set in the 1970s, and it's about a man named Jacob Singer, who's a Vietnam veteran who comes back from the war, and now he's working as a mailman. He's living with his girlfriend, but he starts having these visions where he's being tormented by demons, and you're not sure if the visions are real or if they're just the most horrific hallucinations he's ever had. And as the movie goes on, you start to get the idea that maybe the military experimented on Jacob and the other men in his platoon with a hallucinogenic drug. But again, throughout the film, you're not sure how much is real and how much is a nightmare or a hallucination. Maybe on some level you can interpret it as maybe the demons are real and the drug allowed these men to see the demons, or it's all in their heads, or mainly Jacob's head. I do want to point out that there's going to be spoilers in this review. I feel like it's impossible to discuss the themes of the film without getting into spoilers.
Yeah, I agree.
So, the film stars Tim Robbins as Jacob Singer. It also stars Danny Aiello as Jacob's chiropractor, Louie. It also stars Elizabeth Peña as his girlfriend, Jezebel. It stars Macaulay Culkin, who most people might recognize as Kevin from Home Alone, as his son, Gabe, who you find out actually died before the events of this movie, and he does end up playing a pretty important role in this story. It also stars Jason Alexander as a lawyer named Gary. Rhames is also in the movie as one of the men on Jacob's platoon.
Eriq Salle, I believe is how you pronounce his name. He's another one of the members of the platoon.
And he was in Coming to America, right?
That's right. He was Eddie Murphy's rival in that movie.
And there's also a rather bizarre cameo in the film from Lewis Black, which is interesting. I don't know when Lewis Black started his comedy career, but it's interesting seeing him just pop up in a pretty hardcore horror film.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically a blink and you'll miss it cameo. I mean, he's only in, I dare to say, maybe even just one shot of the entire movie, when you think about it.
But one thing I want to point out is, while this is definitely a drama, it's not without its humor. There is some humor in the film, like the scene where Jacob gets the shit kicked out of him, which this might be going into spoilers, but when he gets the shit kicked out of him and he's left on the side of the road, and you had that guy dressed as Santa taking his wallet, and then as he's in the hospital, he says, "Somebody stole my wallet." The doctors are like, "Who?" "Santa Claus!"
Yeah, and I also find it really funny how, when the Santa is stealing from him, he's one of those Santas who's, trying to get money to help the poor, and he's ringing the bell, and he's got the little pail or bucket.
He has a sign that says "Help the Needy."
Yeah, and he then sees Jacob lying on the ground all, helpless and hurt, and he just goes, "Oh, you poor man, you poor man." And as he's grabbing into his pockets, he's still saying that, "You poor man." And it's something about that. I think, for me, it's both enraging because I hate thieves, and also really funny at the same time. Just the way he's saying it while robbing him.
What do you think of Tim Robbins in this movie as Jacob?
I think he does a great job. He's very likable and sympathetic. And
absolutely.
In the scenes where he's being tortured, oh my god, he really sells it. Oh my god, you feel his pain, his agony, and he makes the scenes more horrific to watch.
He basically plays it as a man in hell, which is kind of how you can interpret the film. In a lot of ways, I would almost consider this movie sort of a loose adaptation of Dante's Inferno, because it is about a man going through hell, both figuratively and literally in some senses.
I can see that.
And he's also, funny in some parts in the film, too, which also makes you sympathize with him a lot. He just comes off like a regular average guy, and he does not deserve what's happening to him at all. What do you think of Elizabeth Peña as his girlfriend?
Her I don't exactly like too much. Not because the performance was bad, but just because the character I found to be, at times, insufferable. She kind of, when he's, broken up looking at the photos of his son, his dead son, she basically has no sympathy for him, and she just grabs them away and then throws them into the fire. And I'm like, was that your place to do? Those aren't your photos, and it's like he's grieving. Be a little more understanding.
Well, the way I kind of look at it is, in the beginning, she seems like a positive force in his life, but as the movie goes on, you realize, no, she really isn't. Yeah. And in a way, you could interpret it as she's one of the demons. Absolutely. Which they kind of definitely hint at that throughout the film.
Yeah, especially when she shows up later in the psych ward hospital, as one of the doctors.
Mm-hmm. Now, what do you think of Jason Alexander as the lawyer?
I think he did a good job.
He was definitely kind of an asshole, but at the same time, given what he thought they were fucking him over, so you kind of get where he's coming from. Did you meet Jason Alexander?
Yes, I did. I met him at the stage door for the Broadway show Fish in the Dark.
All right.
He was very nice, and he was also, besides being in Seinfeld, of course, he was also in this slasher movie called The Burning. Mm-hmm. And this was before, obviously, he got famous from Seinfeld. And I mentioned it to him, and spoiler alert, I mentioned, you were one of the only people to survive that movie. And he said, "Oh, that is true. That is true." Yeah, he's a great actor, Jason Alexander. And I think does a great job in this movie. He's not one of the central characters. He's only in a few scenes, but I think he does very well with what he's given to work with.
I also think it's funny how you normally think of him as being in comedies and stuff because of his role on Seinfeld. So, again, it's interesting seeing him and Lewis Black in this pretty serious movie.
Yeah, it is. It is really funny because, you almost don't expect it. These mainly comedic guys in very serious roles. And I also met Lewis Black, too, and I met him twice. The first time, my dad's company actually hired him to do stand-up comedy at the office's 25th anniversary party.
Oh, really? That's pretty cool, actually.
Yeah, so I actually got to both watch him do comedy and meet him after, and that was wonderful. And then the second time, I met him at the stage door for, it was the TV show, The Larry Wilmore Show. And I'll never forget, I, out of curiosity, asked him, as he was signing my photos, what's your favorite part of being a comedian? And he just said, getting to say whatever the fuck I want. Yeah, but he was very nice, signed everything I had, and took a photo with me both times. He's very nice, and he's very funny, too. I remember him most as the voice of Anger in Inside Out. So, like you said, it's kind of weird to see him, however briefly, in this very serious movie.
Yeah. And what do you think of Danny Aiello? Because Danny Aiello, I thought, in some respects, almost stole this movie.
You could definitely say that.
Because his character is so kind and so sweet, and you could almost, again, when we get into spoilers, I mean, we're kind of getting the spoilers now, but you can almost interpret him as an angel, if you will. There's even a scene where he says, you know, you look like an angel, Louis.
Yeah, and the light is around him. It's so perfect, that shot.
Yeah.
But I think he does a great job, and, you know, he's just a great actor. Was just a great actor overall, you know. I mean, I mainly remember him as Saul, the, you know, tough guy, pizzeria owner, and Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing. But, you know, he's also great here. And like you said, he is a good guy. He's trying to help Jacob, and especially, his performance is especially powerful in the scene where he's getting him out of that horrible hospital, and he's demanding, you know, where is Jacob Singer? You know, he's demanding the orderlies and the nurses show him, and, you know, they're trying to, I guess, get him to get out, you know, but he's not taking any of it. He is forcing his way in and getting his friend out of there, and that's just, that was a really heartfelt part of his performance, you know.
Now, what do you think of Matt Craven as the character of Michael, the chemist who Jacob meets towards the end of the film, who you find out was the one who made this drug that the military gave Jacob and the other men on his platoon?
I mean, I think he's definitely a very tragic character, you know, because he did make the drug that they gave him and the other guys, and he obviously feels a lot of guilt about it, and I think the actor does a good job conveying that.
All right.
I mean, the character has to live with the fact that he's responsible for all these terrible things happening to all those guys, so, you know, I can't imagine what a kind of mental burden that is to bear, you know.
Oh, yeah. As I mentioned before, a lot of this film is kind of left to the viewer's interpretation. Like, you don't know if the demons are real, or if they're a hallucination, but by the end of the film, you find out that basically this whole movie was a dream Jacob was having in the final moments of his life as he was dying in Vietnam. But if you wanted to apply a supernatural explanation for it, you could say that maybe the movie's taken place in purgatory or limbo, and the demons are trying to take him to hell, whereas angels are trying to save him from hell, and you could interpret, like, Danny Aiello's character as being an angel. You could even interpret Michael, the chemist, as being an angel trying to help Jacob. And then the spirit of his son, Gabe, basically does end up taking him to heaven at the end of the film. And I think the fact that his name is Gabe is not a coincidence. Yeah. You know, like, they're definitely trying to imply the angel Gabriel. And even the character of Michael, there's an angel named Michael, who I know in some mythologies is said to be the angel who casts Lucifer out of heaven. So you could interpret Michael the chemist as actually being the angel Michael trying to help Jacob. Sure. There's a lot of biblical interpretations you could make, or you could interpret it as it was all just a fever dream he was having as he was dying. But what do you think of the whole twist, and what would you say your interpretation is?
Well, first of all, I want to say that the twist I thought was very good. To me, at least, it was very, you know, reminiscent of the Twilight Zone, you know, the kind of twists they'd have in a lot of the episodes.
You know what it actually reminded me a lot of? Have you ever seen Carnival of Souls?
I've seen bits and pieces of the original, and I also saw the 1998 remake.
The twist at the end of this movie reminded me a lot of the twist at the end of Carnival of Souls.
But yeah, I mean, I like the ending of this movie because, you know, at the end, he finally, in my opinion, sort of comes full circle. You know, he's trying to, in his head, he's trying to find out what the hell is going on. He's really fighting all these external forces coming to get him, for lack of a better term. But then he finally lets go and accepts his fate. You know, he comes full circle, you know, and he dies, you know, peacefully at the end. Yeah. You know, the doctors say, you know, he has a look of peace on his face.
Because I noticed you were really affected by that speech that Danny Aiello's character gives to Jacob.
Yes, I was. I think it was, like, one of the best parts of the film, especially the way Danny Aiello delivered it. And I'll read it to you now. Eckhart saw hell too. He said, "The only thing that burns in hell is the part of you that won't let go of life. Your memories, your attachments, they burn them all away. But they're not punishing you," he said. "They're freeing your soul. So if you're frightened of dying, and you're holding on, you'll see devils tearing your life away. But if you've made your peace, then the devils are really angels, freeing you from the earth. Just an amazing line, an amazing speech said by an amazing actor, and it rings true throughout the entire film. You know, he's constantly surrounded by both these horrific, monstrous-looking demons who are just trying to do these awful things to him, tearing his soul. And then he's also surrounded by people like Danny Aiello's character and like Gabe, who are the angels trying to free him.
Yeah, and that's also a beautiful way to look at the concept of the afterlife. Like, maybe hell is just, like, you being too attached to the life you left behind.
Yeah.
Now, the film has a lot of really horrific scenes. One of the most famous scenes in the movie is this scene at a party where Jacob sees his girlfriend Jezebel dancing, and all of a sudden he has a hallucination where she's fucked by the devil, basically.
Yes.
It was actually featured on Bravo's 100 Scariest Movie Moments, and I think it's considered to be one of the most famous scenes from the movie. You also have the hospital scene where Jacob is on that stretcher going through the hospital, which is revealed to basically be a level of hell, and it's some of the most horrific, disturbing shit you'll see in any horror film.
They're wheeling him through that hospital, there's severed limbs and blood all over the place. It's like, what the hell is going on here? You know, this place is pure nightmare fuel.
I noticed you were actually pretty disturbed by the scene where Jacob's ex-wife and his two sons, who are still alive, visit him in the hospital, and then you will hear that voice that says, "Dream on." I noticed that kind of got to you.
Yeah, it did. First of all, it just came out of nowhere. You know, you think this is a nice sentimental scene, and then there's that little hint of the demons still haunting him. You know, "Dream on," you know, like that, and it's just... It got to me, and I even said to you while we were watching it, you know, oh God, I hope we don't see the face of whoever just said that. Because if that face is as scary as that voice, then I'll be having nightmares tonight for sure. For me, another one of the creepiest scenes is actually towards the beginning. It's when Jacob is in the subway, and, you know, I just love, first of all, how they kind of set the scene. I mean, I don't know if they filmed that on location or if it was set design. I think it was on location, but, you know, it's, first of all, he's alone, which you never want to be, in my opinion, in a train or a subway.
Especially New York City in the 70s,
yeah.
Which I've heard New York City in the 70s, I've heard, was not a pleasant place to be.
No, it was not, from what I've heard either. But anyway, you know, in the subway, he actually gets on the tracks, which you should also never do in a subway. And it's dark, it's dank, there's, you know, puddles of what I assume to be mud all over the place, there's rats, you know, crawling and scurrying around everywhere. It's awful. And, you know, then, so the scene is already pretty, I'd say, distressing. It's like, you don't want to be in that sort of situation, which he's in. And then, you know, he almost gets hit by the subway, and you only see them for an instant, but it's long enough for you to see people just staring at him from, you know, the windows in the subway cars. And from what you can see, it's just so creepy. And then there's one person who's just waving at him as the train goes by. And I like that it's such a simple thing, you know, a subway going by and people looking out the window, but the director, Adrian Lyne, just finds a way to make that simple thing so creepy and unsettling and uncomfortable, and they just did a great job with it.
Some of the most effective scenes in the movie for me were actually the Vietnam scenes. Like, not even any of the supernatural stuff, but, like, the scenes set in Vietnam were so horrific. Like,
yes.
It really shows you the true horrors of war, and that felt more nightmarish than the stuff that was actually taking place in a nightmare.
Yeah, I can see that. But back to the hospital scene, like, later on, I do want to just point out, you know, whoever the makeup artist was on this film, you know, who did the makeup and the prosthetics, they really outdid themselves with the makeup on that one doctor who doesn't have the eyes and who's saying, "You're already dead," you know, all those creepy things. That was pretty good, you know. Some great makeup work there, I must point that out.
One thing I think is really interesting is the movie uses the demons very sparingly.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I thought they were great. I mean, as I said before, the makeup work was fantastic. I think if there is a hell, maybe there would be demons that looked like that. I mean, yeah, they're pretty unsettling, that's for sure.
Now, I've heard in the original script, in Bruce Joel Rubin's script, they were originally portrayed more as the stereotypical demons, like horns, pitchforks, and pointed tails, and it was Adrian Lyne who suggested that they make the demons look more, almost like more deformed humans in some way, and I think that was a very smart decision.
Oh, so do I. I think it works much better for the film. You know, if they had gone the route of, the stereotypical, horns and pitchforks, I think that would have just been a little too
hokey.
Yeah, silly or cartoonish,
And even the scene at the end where Gabe is taking Jacob to heaven, apparently in the original script that was supposed to be very bombastic, where there are angels with wings and pearly gates, and like the stereotypical image of you going up the stairway to heaven, and again, it was the director who really chose, no, this should be like the stairway in his old home. That should be the stairway to heaven.
Yeah, I think that is more fitting in line to what I said, about it being a peaceful, exit, if you will. It's not, as you said, loud and bombastic. It's, just, he's in his apartment. He's slowly and calmly walking up the stairs with his son. He's taking his time. It's just, they're very at peace. If they had done the loud, bombastic scene, I think it would have been too much. It wouldn't have worked.
Yeah, I also think it's interesting, and the director actually talks about this on the audio commentary, how Gabe in that scene almost behaves more like the adult character leading the child. Like, in that scene, Jacob is almost the child, and Gabe is the adult, because he's the one who's going to have to show Jacob the ropes and, how things work in heaven, and he's the one who, is guiding him. So I thought that was really interesting. And again, most likely it's all just a dream he's having, but I almost like to think that there is something supernatural going on, that maybe he did literally go to heaven at the end, because after everything he's been through, this guy deserves to go to heaven.
Absolutely, I think so too.
And the music, I gotta mention the music in this movie is phenomenal.
Yeah, the music, especially in the opening and closing scenes, is very good. It's amazing. It's just, what a great score. I think especially at the end, that song adds to the whole peaceful moment. You're moving on, the nightmare is over, and it's just peace from here on out.
Now, to quickly wrap up my thoughts on Jacob's Ladder, Jacob's Ladder, I think, is a brilliant film. It's one of my favorite horror films, one of my favorite drama films, one of my favorite war films as well, because it is very much a film about the Vietnam War and about the scars that Vietnam left behind, both on its veterans and on this country as a whole. And it's also very much a conspiracy thriller, and it's a movie that manages to be both terrifying and deeply moving. Now, Jacob's Ladder was actually one of the primary inspirations for the video game Silent Hill. It was also, I've heard, sort of an inspiration for M. Night Shyamalan's The Sixth Sense. You can definitely see the influence of Jacob's Ladder in something like Hellraiser Inferno, if you ever saw that one, or even Hellraiser Hellseeker, which was basically just a remake of Inferno. You can see the influence on those movies. Also, there are a few images of these demons with their heads moving back and forth, and that's an image that's been used a lot in a lot of other things. I think in the music video for Disturbed's Stupefy, I think that effect was used. Oh, there was also the 2006 movie The Jacket with Adrian Brody and Keira Knightley, which I heard was inspired by this movie. But there was actually a remake of this film in, I want to say, 2018 or 2019. We have not watched the remake yet, however, we are going to real quickly, and then basically we're going to give our thoughts on the remake. It's not going to be as in-depth as our review on the real one, but we are going to give our thoughts, and you told me you were reading some of the reviews of the remake.
Oh yeah, I read some of the, not the full reviews, I read you know, on IMDb, the user reviews, they'll have like a sort of headline. Each review will have that. And some of them were just, I mean, they're all the reviews are overwhelmingly terrible, but some of these ones were just hilarious. It's like, one of them was, Hollywood has gone too far. Another one just said the word offensive. I mean, we're in for quite a doozy.
Who knows? Maybe we'll eat our words. Maybe we'll see the remake and it will turn out to be another masterpiece.
Oh yeah, and maybe I'll finally get that poster from the Pennywise the Story of It campaign.
Oh, okay.
Now, before we talk about the remake, here's my friend Christian Feliciano giving his thoughts on the original Jacob's Ladder.
When I was a kid, I thought that Jacob's Ladder was a movie done by David Lynch, because at the time, I was a big fan of David Lynch, and still am. But that was when I was starting to get into his films, and somehow Jacob's Ladder was thrown into the mix. It was a couple of years later when I realized that Jacob's Ladder was not a David Lynch film, but to be honest, I can see why I thought it was. This movie kind of feels like a David Lynch film. It's very dreamlike. It plays heavily with surrealism and imagery and themes that it seems David Lynch would tackle. And it makes you feel like whatever you ate or drank before watching the movie was laced with acid, because this movie goes insane at parts. It's the same feeling I got when I saw Eraserhead. Disturbed, yes, but it also kept me saying, what the hell? Even in the ending, there is a twist to this story, and when you find out what it is, you may be a little disappointed, but that may be because you are living in 2020. Back when this movie came out, I can definitely see people being way more shocked by the ending. And I remember that when I first saw it, I was very shocked by what you find out as well. Because at the time, it was a fresh ending to me. And yes, the twist in 2020 is considered cliche, but at the time, it was probably seen as fresh and new. And people probably enjoyed it just as much as maybe people when they saw The Sixth Sense for the first time. You know, they enjoyed that ending for the first time. You know, Unbreakable or any other twist movies, you know, Psycho. I'm sure at the time when those movies came out, people enjoyed those endings. And they thought, that, wow, this is amazing, this is fresh, this is new, I've never seen something like this. But of course, nowadays, if somebody tried something like that, you would definitely see that coming a mile away. But that doesn't mean anything. Like, just because you are watching it with the eyes of someone from 2020 doesn't mean that Jacob's Ladder is not a good film. It really is. It's one of the best films I've ever seen. It's one of the greatest horror films. Science fiction, depending on how you look at it, you might see it as science fiction. I consider this a horror film, and I love it to death because of that. It's, like I said, the imagery is messed up. There's some crazy things that happen in this film, and you're going to just be like, what am I watching? Why am I watching this? What's going on here? You're just going to keep guessing and keep wanting to know what's going on. And it's just a really good film, really well put together. Acting is fantastic. Tim Robbins, one of the greatest actors ever. Of course, he's also in Shawshank Redemption, which is one of the greatest movies ever as well. And he's always perfect. Elizabeth Peña, she's great. Jason Alexander is in this. And wow, it's a serious role, and it's really good, really, really good how he does it. You know, he plays it really, really well. Altogether, this is a fantastic film. I recommend everybody see it if you haven't seen it already. If you've already seen it, check it out one more time. Why not? Jacob's Ladder is just, one of the greats. And yeah, thank you so much. Bye bye.
So we just watched the remake of Jacob's Ladder. And, that's an hour and a half that I'm never gonna get back.
Neither will I.
I'll say this. It wasn't unwatchable, but it was highly mediocre.
Yeah, I'd say that.
It had none of the emotional impact or power as the original film.
No.
It was just a really bland version of the original film with, it did some things different, like it added a whole thing with Jacob's brother, like he has a brother in this movie. His brother actually plays a pretty significant role in the film, but honestly, we just watched the remake and I'm forgetting shit already.
Yeah, so am I, and that's just because it's not memorable at all. It's pretty forgettable. as you said, it is bland. It's basically a pale imitation of the original.
Yeah.
The leading actor in it is, I mean, I'm sure he's a nice guy, but he is very wooden. He has basically no personality. And, I mean, he just doesn't convey that same sense of tragedy and hopelessness and dread that Tim Robbins did in the original. I mean, he's not very good.
Yeah, and then even the demons in the film, they use CGI for a lot of it, and it's, you think back to the original, they used practical effects for the demons that looked freaking great and still hold up today. And here it's like, it's sort of a mixture between makeup and CGI, which can work sometimes, but it just, it's so... That's the thing about this remake, is it's a standard run-of-the-mill thriller. You've seen this a billion times before, whereas Jacob's Ladder, the original film for the time, was a pretty original film, and like, you didn't really see too many things like Jacob's Ladder at the time that came out. So here, again, there's none of the emotional impact of the original film, none of the same sense of dread or terror that the original film had.
Yeah, and another thing about the demons in this movie, from what I remember, for a lot of the scenes with the demons in the original, they kind of showed you them. They lingered on them for a little while, whereas in this one, it kind of just gives you a brief flash of one and then it cuts away. It's just not... It doesn't have the same impact.
Yeah, there's a character in the movie named Hoffman who... I guess is supposed to be the equivalent of the Matt Craven character from the original film, the character of Michael. Here he's called Hoffman, but they make him more of a villain in this one. But they really don't do much with that, they don't really build him up very well.
Yeah,
he's only in a few scenes, and then, it turns out he's our big bad in the movie.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. Him being the big bad in the movie, that comes completely out of left field. It's like, there was no hint or build up to this. It's not even like in a way where you would say, oh, I didn't see that coming. It's not like in a good way. It's like in a who cares way.
Yeah, and also in the movie Jacob has a psychiatrist named Lewis, who's basically the equivalent of the Danny Aiello character from the original. But in the original film, Jacob and Louis had a very warm relationship, and it was so sweet, and it was like a genuine friendship, whereas here it's like there's nothing to their relationship at all, and there's a repeat of the whole angels and devils speech from the original film, but has none of the emotional impact that the original film had. Because in the original film, Louis was genuinely trying to help Jacob, and what he said was genuinely meant to help Jacob, whereas here, when the character of Louis says that to Jacob, it's just to get him out of his hair,
Yeah, pretty much. It's like, okay, I've told you this meaningful thing, I've given you this heartwarming speech, now go away now.
And then also, in the movie, one of the demons you see is this old woman who, at the end of the film, because basically the movie ends where Jacob dies, it doesn't end where you find out he's been dead the whole time like the original. This time it's just, he dies at the end, actually sacrificing himself to save his brother and stop Hoffman. And then he goes to heaven at the end, but you see the demon woman become an angel, I guess, and it's just like, it kind of, I guess it took that whole angels and devils speech literally, but it missed the point entirely, Yeah,
it's just not as impactful as the ending to the original. In the original, he's led up the stairway to heaven by his son, and it's more emotional, and it's more meaningful. Here it's like, who the hell is this woman? Who cares? She has no relation to him. It's just, why is she the one who's helping him to heaven?
Yeah, and then we should probably, because we already spoiled the original film, we should probably bring up the whole twist that throughout the film you think Jacob is this doctor, after he came back from the war. But it turns out the character who you thought was his brother was actually Jacob at the end. It was kind of this
they're still brothers, but... Yeah, basically Jacob thought that his brother was dead. He died during the war, and then he found out, oh my god, he's alive. But then it just turns out that it's sort of the other way around. Where,
Yeah.
I mean, Jacob didn't die in the war, but he's the brother who's all fucked up with all the drugs and all that, and it's just... it doesn't... This movie just doesn't work well.
Yeah, no, not at all. You know, in the beginning of the film, I was like, okay, this isn't terrible, it's more just painfully mediocre. But by the end, I was like, I kind of just want this to be over, and honestly, yeah, the movie sucks.
Yeah, I felt the same way. I just wanted it to end. In fact, I was constantly pausing it to check the time, because on my TV, it kind of shows you, when you pause it, how much time you have left in the movie. I was kind of doing that a couple times towards the end. I'm like, oh my god, tell me we don't have much more time.
And it's ironic, too, because the original film was longer, yet this feels longer than the original
that's
film.
Right. Yeah, this one's shorter by about 20 minutes or so.
And, it's... And you noticed, when we talked about the original Jacob's Ladder, we had a lot to say.
Yeah.
Here we're kind of struggling to find things to say, you know? It's just like, there's a reason Jacob's Ladder, a movie that came out over 30 years ago now, is still talked about. It's still talked about today.
Yeah.
This movie, nobody's going to be talking about this movie 30 years from now.
Yeah, exactly. It's completely forgettable.
Yeah.
There's nothing of value to remember about it.
Yeah, I don't even know if this got a theatrical release when it came out. If it did, I certainly didn't hear about it.
Neither did I. Oh, I mean, I vaguely remember hearing news of a remake being made, but that was it. That was as far as it went.
So that was our review of the original Jacob's Ladder / a sort of rambling rant on the remake of Jacob's Ladder. I hope you enjoyed this video, and see you all at a later time.